Hello, everyone. My name is Debbie Melillo. I'm the Distance Learning Director for Tech Transfer Central, and we're proud to bring you today's program titled Career Development Strategies for Tech Transfer Professionals and Recent Trends in Hiring and Retaining TTO Staff. The recording, program materials, and PDF transcript of this session is available to you as part of your registration fee and can be accessed at the link in your login instructions email. Go ahead and bookmark that link as the recording will be ready in about 2 days and the PDF will be uploaded in about 2 weeks. Feel free to submit questions at any time during the program using the chat forum, which is at the bottom right of your screen, or you can use the raise your hand icon, which is at the bottom of your screen during the Q&A session, and we'll bring you live on the air. This webinar is generously sponsored by Gardner Innovation Search Partners, a technology transfer recruiter with decades of experience matching talented candidates with universities, institutions, and corporations around the world. And by Technology Transfer Tactics, the monthly advisor on best practices in all things tech transfer and translational research. And by University Industry Engagement Advisor, the first and only newsletter devoted to helping universities expand holistic industry engagement efforts and attract corporate partnerships. I'd like to extend a special welcome to our All Access Pass attendees. Our All Access Pass is a 12-month subscription package that allows you and your staff access to every live webinar and over 500 archive programs, a subscription to the newsletter of your choice, free job listings, and free MCLE application services where applicable. You also have access to exclusive subscriber resources such as sample agreements, policies, special reports, and more. You can join me for a free 10-minute informational session by emailing me at dmelillo@techtransfercentral.com to schedule at your convenience. I'll post that email address in the chat. I'll now turn the program over to our moderator for today, Glen Gardner, President of Gardner Innovation Search Partners. Mr. Gardner is joined by Mary Albertson, Director of the Office of Technology Licensing for Georgia Institute of Technology, and Jason Stolworthy, the Director of Technology Deployment for Idaho National Laboratory. Thank you so much. Glen, I'll turn it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you, and welcome to the seminar. I guess I'm not used to WebEx. I'm used to more Zoom, but I'm sure I can figure this out. And I've been recruiting tech transfer folks for about a little over 20 years now. I got started because the company who co-manages Idaho National Labs is Battelle. It's here in Columbus, Ohio, and my very first tech transfer search was the Director of Tech Transfer at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, which would be a peer lab to Idaho National Laboratory. I have worked with Idaho in the past. We're still doing a bunch of recruiting for Mary at Georgia Tech, and I've been to both places and been around the audit community for the past 20 years. Advance the slide here. So we recruit tech transfer people, some venture development, some accelerator work, but at the end of the day, core tech transfer is what we do, and we've worked with about 60 or 70 institutes around the world in the United States, Canada, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Abu Dhabi, and Australia. With that, I will turn this over to Jason, and if you'd like to give yourself an introduction, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks. Jason Stolworthy, I'm the Director of Technology Deployment here at Idaho National Lab. I got started in my education with an interest in science and started out with chemistry and biochemistry, transitioned to chemical engineer. I got my master's in that, and I'm a registered patent attorney and did that for a little while. But during my tenure or during my law degree, I moonlighted in the tech transfer office at WSU Research Foundation as an intern there, and that's how I became exposed to this area, which is not broadly known, but my career over my 20 years has been focused on technology innovation culture, IP protection, IP transfer, licensing, and commercialization. I've really had the opportunity to work across diverse settings, starting in a university, working at federal labs, and then also working in international organizations, and specifically for the Qatar Foundation, where we also manage Carnegie Mellon, Qatar's intellectual property and commercialize that, as well as these other institutions you see here on the list. So that's a little intro to me.
Mary, and let me move the slide.
Hi, Mary Albertson. I'm the director of the Office of Technology Licensing at Georgia Tech. Prior to this, I worked 26 years at Stanford and 2 years at the University of Utah. I basically, as you can tell, kind of grew up in my career in this profession. Prior, I worked at 2 biotech companies and realized I really liked the intersection of science and business, but I like the mission of the university. So that's why I'm here.
Perfect. So, and once again, this is meant to be an interactive thing, so we're not going to be going purely by the slides. And I think, Sat, you raised your hand a little earlier. If you want to pose a question, feel free to do that. And but kind of some things we're going to talk about are careers, how to advance your career, things that people are looking for, maybe differences between academia and national labs, corporations, things like that. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about. So I guess the main question I'd like to ask, and I'm going to direct this one to Jason first, is I'd like Mary and Jason to talk about this. Differences in academic tech transfer versus national labs. And I've worked with both. And this past year, I attended the Federal Laboratory Consortium national meeting, and I think there's more of a difference than even I thought. I don't know, Jason, do you want to maybe start with this?
Yeah, starting with the culture, because I've worked in both universities and national labs. There's certainly a difference where I kind of describe, labs as fitting somewhere between, I guess, what I would say is a kind of like a military environment and an academic environment and a corporate environment, because the national labs are actually ran by corporate entities who are the managing and operating entities for the laboratories, but they're governed by Department of Energy rules. And but most of the people that work here are come out of academia. And so it's this weird modge podge of corporate academia and kind of the national defense type environment. And all national labs are a little bit different in their culture. Like Berkeley National Lab is much more academic, influenced, and Idaho National Lab is kind of grew out of the nuclear environment and has that sort of look and feel. So everyone's a little bit different, and we're driven in the lab environment. We're probably much more driven by regulations than academia is.
Mary, do you kind of want to touch on the same topic?
I don't have as much comparison here, but looking at corporate entities, one thing is you're dealing with a much narrower technical focus, and the bottom line is the bottom line. So at the university, the bottom line is not necessarily the bottom line, it's impact. You have to kind of have a different philosophy, be prepared to operate in a different philosophy at a corporation. And your responsibilities as far as how you're managed and who you're responsible to can be very different depending upon how big the company is. Other people who direct you may be the ones who make some of the actual decisions. So you have a little less leeway.
There's one other comment I'd like you to address, Mary, coming from Stanford, then as a private institution, and then going to University of Utah and Georgia Tech, which are both public institutions. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yes, as far as hiring in the background for each university, it's been a little bit different. Some universities focus very heavily on someone having a PhD or a JD, for example. At Stanford, that was not one of our requirements, and we certainly did hire people with PhDs. At University of Utah, they also focused their ads on people with PhDs, but that's not the profile of the people that I had working for me. It was varied. So I guess I see some differences as far as what the expectation is when you're hiring someone. As far as policies and things that you have to work under, they were a little different, but basically the same kinds of issues as far as conflict of interest and, obviously compliance and all that is the same. But style or philosophy may be different.
And then I'm going to interject something, and this is my personal view, recruiting for national labs and universities. And national labs are they do a lot of CRADAs, and Jason can tell you a little bit about CRADAs and work for other agreements. And it seems like that's what's the guiding rule, or kind of what rules the landscape. And that's just my opinion. I might not be right with that. But the question I have for Mary is, and the part where I got upset with the national labs are, they said nobody can learn how to do a CRADA unless you came from another national lab. And I don't agree with that. Can you comment on that, Jason? And then I'll turn that back over to Mary. Sorry to throw you under the bus.
So one of the distinctions, Glenn, I think, is that national labs often combine licensing, CRADAs, and SPPs under the same umbrella as technology transfer, and they're viewed, as kind of the same, function in a way. Whereas with most universities, I understand they have a group that's called sponsored projects. And they generally work on the equivalent of CRADAs, cooperative research agreements, and sponsored projects, as the national labs. But those are tend to be much more separated in academia, those two offices. And so, but when you come into technology transfer at a national lab, they're often looking for somebody that has a full spectrum of capabilities, can negotiate cooperative agreements, can negotiate licenses, understands intellectual property and how it fits into all that and such. And so it's just a different scope.
Mary, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, I had some experience at Stanford with CRADAs. We, for some reason, were involved with a couple, but the Office of Sponsored Projects, which was within the same office, handled most of those. We didn't have that many, actually, but we worked very closely with them.
Okay, and on that same thing, what I've kind of seen from my recruiting seat, and I'm not necessarily sure that's what you guys are seeing from your seat, is that the tech transfer office, that sponsored research agreements are becoming more prevalent in tech transfer, and doing translational deals with industry are more prevalent. Mary, can you comment on that, and how is that affecting the people that are coming up new in their tech transfer career?
I just had a glitch. Do you mind repeating the question?
Yeah. So, and Jason, did you hear the question?
Yeah, but I think it's better directed at Mary. Yeah.
Okay. So the question I have is, I think along the lines that Jason talked about, that these sponsored research agreements are becoming almost more prevalent than licensing, from what I'm seeing. Master service agreements, industry partnership deals, and these deals are becoming more complicated, but really focused on more sponsored research and translational research. How has that changed in the past maybe few years, and how has that affected the typical licensing person in your organization?
I would agree that's definitely true. I had some different experiences because at Stanford it was a little different, but that was also a little while ago, and that we did a lot of licenses. But right now, especially at Georgia Tech, I have to say a lot of the time I spend looking at IP clauses in sponsored research agreements where there's never going to be a license. And the whole point, which I don't disagree with, frankly, is sponsored research is more important than doing a license. I mean, the purpose of the university behind the students is research. We're kind of a secondary or tertiary point. So I do agree, and the people who, like even corporate engagement, who works with these companies, are more interested in talking about sponsored research than licenses. And I do agree, it's changed over time.
Jason, do you have any comments on that?
No, I agree with that. And Glenn, I thought another point to talk about among these various, opportunities or directions to go. If you're, early in your career, maybe Glenn, you could talk a little about compensation and the levels of compensation between these types of institutions. And in addition, I'd mention, that after working in the university and federal lab, I think there's a little bit more pressure in the national labs to maybe perform. I don't know if that's true, but at least the two experiences or the various experiences that I've had, this feels much more like a corporate environment with a little extra stress that way, because we're often measured by our performance. That's how we get paid as contractors, is by our performance. So it does influence how we operate.
But and there's something called, what's it called? A PEP score? What's this?
PAMP, Performance Evaluation Measurement Plan. And so that's how we get paid.
And so what is your top line metric?
Well, of course, it's, a performance in the PAMP, and there's a whole bunch of measures, but technology transfer and how well we perform at that is something that's considered in the amount of fee that we get for managing the national labs.
But so and let me shift this over to Mary. So Mary, with your chief commercialization officer, Siva. So what is the mission? What is the driver? I think if we go to Stanford, which we're working with right now, I think their mission is to push everything out for the good of mankind. I think that's what Stanford's mission is. And don't quote me on that one, but what is the driver? Is it how much licensing revenue we can bring in, or is it number of licenses, or what is the overall arching top line metric?
It's the same as Stanford, which is to make an impact. And the reason why I've been in academia so long, I like the mission, and I'm like, all of these inventions are sitting on someone's bench top, and there's somebody out there in the world who could use it in a way that would make a big impact. And if you listen at autumn meetings, for example, you'll hear that is the mission, is to make an impact. Secondarily, revenue. When I joined this office 14 months ago, there was a lot of building the office that needed to be done and changing the focus a little bit. Luckily, the metrics that I was given, revenue is, they're not going to look at it, 5 years from now, they'll give me a goal. So right now, as far as just, we're supposed to be making, increasing the profile of our office at the university, changing the culture a little bit so that we can even get the raw material in that we need in order to do these licenses. So for us, one of the metrics is number of disclosures, which we obviously want good disclosures, not just 1,000 disclosures. But we're looking at things like what's the frequency of filing patents? One of the metrics I love, how many new lead inventors do you have? What percentage do those make up? Because those are the new ideas, and that starts a whole train of serial disclosures.
Jason, any more comments on that?
No.
Okay. Aligning personal goals with professional fulfillment. So I guess, and maybe if I can start with Jason, because I think you took a wild card and went overseas to the Middle East and did a little stint there. You left Idaho National Labs. You connected with another National Lab gentleman that I placed with the Battelle organization, I think. So, and then took a real wild card ringer at the Qatar Foundation. You want to talk about personal goals and professional fulfillment from your side?
Yeah, so just starting out in my career, I had the opportunity to either go the direction of working in a law firm or going into tech transfer, and I had two job offers, and I had to choose one or the other. Ultimately, I choose to go the direction of tech transfer, and honestly, it was because I was kind of excited about making a difference in the world. The pay was about a little bit less than what the law firm had offered me, but I really thought that the tech transfer field aligned better with my personal goals, which was to make an impact, make a difference. And there's no bigger difference I think you can make in the world than deploying a technology or getting a technology put to use. I mean, our lives are all so impacted by technology. 80% of our GDP comes from technological advancements. And so you just look around your life and how much technology helps you and changes your life. This is a great career if you want to make a difference.
I mean, there's a crazy little thing right here, you know, 12 years it's been around, and you just think of the gains, and you know, every time you swipe that to open, someone gets a licensing royalty just to swipe it. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and so I think this is the perfect nexus also between, you know, law, intellectual curiosity, entrepreneurial spirit, you know, job variety. If you like networking and talking to people, there's so many different things you can do with this. So it's a really, really fun versus, you know, being a patent attorney and primarily sitting, you know, behind a desk writing and drafting, you know, is just not suited to a long-term, you know, environment that I wanted to kind of be in. Although I think it's great. Some people love that, and I'm really glad we have those people too. But, you know, yeah, I did jump to Qatar, and it was largely because I thought I could make a big difference by, you know, exporting, I guess, this practice of technology transfer to, you know, another nation and to help them start up. So they never had a technology transfer office before. They really didn't have an active IP management system for all the companies and universities that they managed. And so that was a ton of fun. We went over there and established their tech transfer office, and one of the highlights of my career for sure. But now I've become much more interested in culture and how culture influences innovation and innovation development. And so I've been working quite a bit on that front, on how to increase the amount of, you know, innovation productivity in a research organization. And and I'm kind of going that direction because I feel like that can make a big difference. If we can just move the needle on culture, we can have a much more productivity from our research dollars. So I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah.
Mary, is there any kind of, I mean, you know, being at Stanford as long as you have, and everybody knows, I would assume most people know the Google story, but I mean, you probably saw, I talked to a gentleman, and his father was a researcher at Stanford, and he sold his company some gene therapy thing for, you know, $192 million. So give me a little bit about what keeps you going in this world.
Well, so as Jason said, and I said earlier, I mean, making an impact for sure, but obviously Google made an impact, for better or worse. It's up for debate. And one of our big winners was recombinant DNA, the Cohn-Boyer, which made an enormous impact because basically every biotech company in the country had to take a license to that. But in addition to that, it is, again, some of the things Jason said about what your style is and how you think you can make a contribution. I mean, being able to very quickly pick up a broad range of technologies, to be able to have the creativity to see where those may be applicable, the ability and the good communication skills to work not only with faculty who have their own set of personalities, but potential licensees. So the people that come into this, that I've known who come into this, are willing and excited about doing all those things, as opposed to perhaps at a company, again, narrower technology and different finish line. I mean, you're looking for a product that's going to make the company money, or the company doesn't exist.
Interesting. We'll get into trends of job seekers, and I guess I'll ask both of you guys this. So, you know, when we put out a position, when we engage with a university or national lab or industry, you know, all the people want to know from me is, can I work remote? Can I work remote? Can I work remote? And now we're seeing a big pullback that people are wanting people back in the office. So, you know, the trends, I'd like to hear Jason and Mary's view on, and I know Mary's because we're engaged with her with working on a bunch of things. So, you know, can you tell me about the Idaho National Lab's version on, you know, hybrid employment or remote employment, and if you want to get into benefits, and I just talked to a university and they have a bonus program. So I'd like to hear if either of you have bonus programs too. So anything you want to talk about, on trends in your hiring now. Jason, you want to start?
Yeah, Glenn, definitely. You know, I've hired about 4 or 5 people post COVID. All of them do ask about flex time. It's never been a deal breaker really with my top candidates. And I do require the top candidates to start here and work full time at the lab. And then, you know, perhaps shift to maybe part-time hybrid, and allow some flexibility for them to work at home. Which, you know, mainly allows for better work-life balance and such, and is very helpful overall for retention. But you know, I generally look for candidates that are willing to you know, move here, because there's just so often they have to come into work. You know, they have to, you know, interact with the PIs, and they have to join, you know, conferences or you know, larger events here, and so it's you know, somewhat impractical to have them live too far away. So that's been a big thing. Company culture and values. I think, you know, especially the younger generations are looking for diversity. They're looking for, you know, environments that, you know, they feel more accepted in. And so there's definitely some of that. And you know, that's kind of what I've seen. Although I haven't seen too much of a change. They're asking for more money. People want more because of inflation, and it's been a challenge for retention, but we've managed through that. So, you know, those are the 3 points that I would probably make.
And the other thing, before I turn this over to Mary, the other thing with Idaho National Labs, and I've been there, and it's very, it's a one-trick pony town, if I could say that. You know, it's really remote, and I would think that people really either love it or really don't love it. And that's probably a big challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, it is definitely, Glenn. But I mean, most people we screen out because they don't apply. You know, they're gonna think I'm not going to go there. So
Right.
I think that impacts our candidate pool more than, you know, who we select in the end.
And then the other key thing is, how many minutes does it take to Grand Targhee ski area or the place in Wyoming? So I guess I'll give you your sales pitch there. That's why I've been invited out by the gentleman I placed out at Idaho National Labs a long time to go ski at Grand Targhee, but it's world-class snow skiing out there, and world-class falconeering too. I had another candidate that I was talking to for Idaho National Labs, and I didn't realize that there's great falconeering in Idaho.
Yeah, yeah, it's a double-edged sword, as you say. You know, there are people that love it, and they're, you know, will apply specifically for that environment, and there are people that, you know, don't want anything to do with the winter.
Yeah.
So,
And then on the flip side, located in one Silicon Valley with Stanford, University of Utah, which to me, it has snow skiing, mountain biking, and speed skating, which I love. And then Atlanta, which is, I don't know, one of the top 10 biggest cities in the United States. So Mary, and any thoughts on any of this stuff or?
Sure. I mean, as far as recruiting goes, you know, it's still an issue to get people to relocate. Even though Atlanta, surprisingly to me, was named one of the top 2 cities to take a vacation. But the ability to offer hybrid has certainly been good. I want my licensing associates to be on campus meeting with inventors, but I only require them to do that 1 day a week. I actually have somebody a licensing associate who lives in Texas and just flies out once a month for the week. The non-licensing associates, I'm okay with remote working. They're not as involved with face-to-face with the inventors, and that has been something that has been very attractive. As far as culture, I have a very tight-knit group. And I guess it comes across in interviews, because some of the feedback I get from these candidates is what a great team. And they are. I've hired, I think, 8 people since I started a year ago. We've doubled the office. It's been very, very painful. Much easier now that we're working with a recruiter. But part of it has to do with salaries. And you know, I know that everybody has problems to some extent, and I'm not trying to compare us to MIT or Stanford. And recruiting wise, Stanford is very tough because it's so expensive to live there. I mean, it's crazy. We had problems when I was there. But the whole salary thing, since the first week I've been here, I've been working with HR, trying to get them more in line with what other universities pay. Not a ton of success. So that's also been part of the problem, is offering people a salary that will attract them to relocate. And I've proposed a bonus pool. I guess I can't have it reviewed by USG, the central entity that oversees all the universities. I can't have it reviewed by them until the end of this fiscal year, which would be June. But we are proposing to have a bonus pool.
Jason, do you have bonuses at Idaho National Labs?
We do, but I think they're rather small, you know, maybe $3,000 or less, which I don't think really moves the needle on anybody's, you know, excitement or behavior these days.
And then, Mary, since you're a past president of Autumn, you might know this question better than Jason and I, but I just spoke with a university, and what percentages, I think this might need to be another topic that maybe, Deb, you could implement. What percentage of the Autumn universities or Autumn and FLC universities have a bonus program? I would say that's less than 5%. And I don't know if I have any bearing on that. That might be
Yeah, I can't put a number on it because I never did a survey, but anecdotally, it's very small.
Yeah.
I should mention that University of Utah, we had a bonus program that was substantial, way over 3K. That it was related to revenue. The policy, we didn't have one at Stanford, and we thought they weren't good to have. Here, the one I've proposed isn't related to revenue, because our revenue is not good, but it's related to a series of metrics. Each metric gets weighted differently each year, depending upon what your goal is. And you put, you know, what the medium goal is, what a stretch goal is. If you get all the stretch goals, you get maximum. It's a % of salary, you know, so then it like I said, it's weighted. So it depends on where in the range you hit and what the weighting is of that.
Perfect. See if I had any questions. See here, hold on a second.
Yeah, that's an interesting question about what do you think is the ideal profile for a tech transfer professional? This is all over the map. Like I said, you know, some places require a PhD or a JD. I personally don't think you need that. You need to be obviously quick enough to pick up on different technology areas, but I haven't had a problem with a faculty member looking down on me because I don't have a PhD. And obviously that's part of the reason why I don't think it's necessary. I don't have one. We had some concerns when we were at Stanford about somebody getting a PhD, had a very narrow experience with technology. That doesn't actually turn out to be a problem, but that was one of the questions we looked at. As far as having a JD, I don't need anybody with a JD because we have external counsel who does the patent work. At Utah, we had a contracts group, so they were JDs. Here, we don't have a contracts group, but when somebody hires someone with a JD, it's frequently patent related, a patent attorney. And again, I don't personally need that.
Jason, do you want to comment on that, Ben?
Yeah, as Mary said, this is an interesting question. And is strongly biased by, you know, what credentials, you know, you probably have yourself, but meaning me, not Mary, but, you know, just, I will say that one is the most crucial thing is a strong technical background. So I think an advanced degree in science and technology is expected in some areas more than it is in others. You know, like I think like bio and stuff like that, they seem to want, masters and PhDs in those areas. Whereas if it's like, chemical engineering or something, is more of bachelor's is more acceptable in engineering areas. I don't know why that is, but that kind of is. And then I think, because this field, crosses law, it crosses and business, I think MBAs and law degrees are often seen as favorable among certain, people in the community. Some people don't care at all. It's all over the map, I think, like Mary's suggesting. But I mean, really what matters most is your initial job and having that technical background to sustain you throughout your career. And so whatever's going to get your foot in the door, then, quickly becomes your track record of success is what you're selling. And your reputation in the community and having demonstrated, that you have capability. So then I think, having a law degree or having an MBA becomes less relevant. But I think core to all of it is that technical degree.
And I want to say I totally agree with that. And probably one of the reasons I got hired, even though I don't have a PhD, is because tech transfer wasn't even a career when I started, right? That was almost 30 years ago. I had worked in business development at a company and I had a technical degree. So they were willing to bring me in and see how it went. I would say now the vast majority of jobs out there require a PhD.
And
I'll just make the comment that, there are many different areas in the careers of tech transfer. It requires database experts. It requires marketing experts. It requires administrative experts. And so, especially in the larger offices, they have these specialized, functions. And so you don't necessarily have to have technical degrees to go those directions. You can contribute a lot. But I think if you want a long-term career, it's worth the time to get that technical degree, to the level that's appropriate for the type of field that you're getting your degree in.
I agree.
There was another question brought up. I'm going to read this. Can you speak to the liquidity of this job market and the ease of shifting from one setting to another? I'm going to take a crack on that one first, and then I'll open this up to you. One, I feel, and so once they start using a recruiting firm like my firm, they really want specific things. And so I think I'm looking at this from a different view, but the analogy that I've used it, and I'm a bicyclist and a bike racer. So if you look at everyone in the Tour de France, to make it to there, you have to be the top 1% of all cyclists in the world anyways. And then when we're trying to recruit for the Idaho National Labs, the Georgia Techs, the Stanford, the Auburns of the world, it's like you're in a really tight pool. And so everybody becomes, I think that my view is people tend to really, really become specific. So I would say that as much as we need more people, the liquidity and the ease of getting in from one place to another is pretty hard. It's got to fit from a salary level, cultural fit level, technical level, and there's about 6 more different things that need to fit. And it happens either very organically or it doesn't happen at all. But any idea and then even going from academia to national labs, I've had a very hard time pulling those and vice versa, and pulling people from industry and law firms in and out of the communities. I found it all very harder than I would think. Mary, do you want to tackle this one first?
I mean, I would say a couple things. Part of it depends upon what level you're at. Like, I've hired 2 very entry-level people who just finished their PhDs, and they've done internships, which I find very important at tech transfer offices, but there hasn't been a difficult time for them to come into this position. I know a lot of offices who don't hire people that are that entry level. As far as getting somebody from a company, the biggest issue is salary, because private industry can pay more than universities. As far as desire to do that, I love having somebody with industry experience. I have a person now who spent 20 years in licensing in industry. So I think it depends on what the office needs and your technical background, as Jason was saying, and how you've used it.
Jason, any comments on that one?
No, other than I'd say, I don't know, Glenn, I'm curious your opinion on this, but I think it's extra hard for someone from academia or a federal lab to go to corporate environment. It's easier for corporate to come the other way. Is that true, Glenn, or?
I'm going to use, like I said, we just recruited the director of physical science licensing for Stanford, and we're doing 2 life science searches for Stanford, and then we just filled the director of or the president of the University of Tennessee Research Foundation, and the University of Colorado Anschutz Medical Center, and they all don't want to take the time because they can't to train the people how to. It's a different mentality from industry.
Yeah.
They don't teach them about vital compliance. They don't want to teach them. A problem they have is in academia, the inmates run the asylum, if that's a fair statement. So I think the industry people think that, hey, they just go out and tell the PIs they need to do it this way, but that's not how it works. Mary, can you comment on this?
No, I totally agree. Faculty they run the university, right? And we can't tell the faculty to do anything. And we have to, in many cases, kind of impress upon them, they're the experts in science. I'm not telling you what to do or telling you I understand it as well as you do, but I'm the expert in licensing, because some of them really want to have a lot of control. So I do think that's something that's very different. Even getting some of the faculty to realize they need to assign it to the university, whereas in a company, you do.
Right. I'm going to quit our slide deck for a little bit because we got some really good questions coming in. So I'd rather answer the questions than stick to our slide. What do you think the ideal profile for a tech transfer professional? A law specialist or an engineer with a specialization in IPR? And I apologize, but I don't know what IPR is.
IP rights. But I think we did kind of cover that when I was talking about PhD versus JD and things like that.
And then kind of a thumb rule, I'm going to give my thought. I think if we were to survey the whole tech transfer community, I would say, and I've caught some flack on this one, but if they would say an advanced scientific degree with a JD or an MBA, my gut feeling is that would be 70-30 MBA over the JD. But and Jason, you said you have a JD?
Yep.
So what would you, and you would probably flip it the other way then, maybe. So can you give me that thought?
It would, because I'm biased. It's just my bias in a way. Everyone's got biases in these ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that the law degree comes in very handy for agreement negotiations.
Yep.
Yeah, the NBA comes very handy for identifying the right licensee. So it's and to network and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's a toss up.
And then this next question, this is another hard one, but it says related to job seeking and recruitment, why is it most tech transfer offices rather than HR departments are hesitant to hire professionals needing visa sponsorship? Well, the gentleman who wrote this, I got him his job because I strong-armed his boss into looking at H-1B candidates. And this is a platform that I've been pushing hard to hire a more diverse candidate pool. And I mean diverse people coming from the UK, coming from the Middle East, coming from around the world, coming from Australia. So the problem is it's not the tech transfer offices, it's more the immigration laws that are in the United States that prevent this. And then in Mary's case, and I'm sure in Jason's case, there's export control issues, because I know Mary's office does a lot of business with like Homeland Security and a lot of sponsored research, so they have to segment that off, and they can't hire a person for export control reasons. And I would assume Jason's probably worse with nuclear stuff. So can either of you touch on this visa sponsorship or export controls and why you can't sponsor a visa?
I think
Well,
you highlighted everything I
Oh,
would.
go ahead, Jason.
Well, I was gonna say, Glenn, I think you highlighted everything I want to say, except for we have to have clearances often. And so we work on technologies we can't disclose quite frequently.
And I think the biggest thing that you hit on for me, because this question said rather than HR department, there is no decision I can make that isn't dictated by the HR department, period. So I've tried all kinds of things and spoken with the immigration specialist at the university. They can do it for faculty. They will not do it for my office. Taking into consideration, we couldn't do it anyway for the reason that Glenn said, export control issues.
I'm going to jump into the next question. How does career growth look like? How long would be the right time between two positions in tech transfer? Is moving out the only way to grow? And so this is another tough question. You guys are really putting the hard questions to us. So I'm gonna say, what is the length of time you need to be there? In the past, I would have said between 4 and 7 years that you need to stay at a position. With the Gen, I don't know what Gen we're on, Gen Y, Gen X, Gen whatever the heck we're on. I think what I think nowadays, what I'm gearing my clients to is 3 years. I would think hopefully you stay 3 to 5 years, because it takes a year just to get your feet underneath you and learn the systems. So and then this has been a problem with career growth. Tech transfer, kind of by design, is very flat. There's one Jason, there's one Mary, there's some maybe associate directors, and then there's some worker bees. So, is the only way to move out to move up? Very tough question, and I'm not even going to attempt this one. Mary, do you want to take a crack at this?
Sure. At Stanford and here, when I hire a very junior level person, I feel lucky to keep them 2 years. I assume that after 2 years and they've got some experience, that to move up somehow, they'll move to another university. Here, we just went through with HR this process of trying to make a career path. But as Glenn said, there's basically me. I now have, because I just created the position, 2 associate directors. And then there's a bunch of licensing associates who have different flavor titles, but are they really all just the same? And are you, when you're looking for job growth, are you looking for a difference in responsibilities, or are you just looking for a difference in title and salary? So I think those are the different approaches I've seen. Some people are looking for one or the other, but for retention purposes, we just made this, career ladder. But at University of Utah, I interviewed lots of people who said, I'm looking for career growth. And I said, the only way you're going to grow here is if you knock me off. My job is the next job. So anyway, like you said, it tends to be fairly flat.
Jason, any comments?
Yeah, I agree with that. And if you want to move up at your time scale, you got to be willing to move. I think that's all there is to it. Almost all these tech transfer offices are small. 20 people or less. I would say 90+% or 20 people or less. And so in order to move up, you got to wait for somebody to vacate, and then you got to be their preferred candidate. And so yeah, you gotta be ready to move if you want to move up at your time scale.
Need to move up to move out, and then a lot of places are trying to they're doing everything they can, but a lot of times their hands are tied. So tough question. Thanks for asking. I'm going to go on the next question. How can a PhD level research scientist in a biotech company with no tech transfer experience make himself a strong candidate for someone to break into tech transfer? I'm going to lead this off with, it's harder than I think it should be. And once again, so I think the other thing too is all the people that I talk to from industry, I warn them on a pay cut, and most people are okay with the pay cut coming from industry. Yeah, the best tip of advice I can have is, participate on these calls and attend Autumn. Autumn is our Super Bowl, or from Jason's standpoint, the Federal Laboratory Consortium, but that may be a little bit more closed than the Autumn community. Didn't mean that offensively. But I would say go to Autumn, get on the Autumn Connect app, meet people, and I would also say try to, if there's a way to get into an internship or volunteer with the tech transfer office. I'm gonna turn this over to Mary.
I totally agree. For me, one of the things that's very valuable is somebody who's done an internship. If you're in industry, that may not be an easy thing for you to do, but Autumn is the place to connect. And I would say connections and referrals are the number one way, in my opinion, of getting a job that is a good fit, where you have some information about the boss, the team, things like that. Anything is a leg up. So if you go to an Autumn meeting and you get business cards or contact information, my number one advice whenever I'm at these meetings is use them. Call those people up a couple weeks later and just say, it was great meeting you. Again, this is what I'm interested in, or whatever. But yeah, I think networking is key.
Great. I agree with that 100%. I'll also say as a PhD, you're already a strong candidate. One thing I think simple you could do is go take the patent bar, patent exam, and become a patent agent. That would take you about 3 weeks or 3 or 4 weeks, 2 weeks of strong study. And then, take the exam. If you're good academically, you can do that. And that, seeing somebody that is also, as patent agent would increase your credentials quite a bit. It shows that you have that, demonstrates that you have that IP understanding. Although you may not, use it necessarily in the tech transfer environment, it certainly does establish that you understand the IP side of things. So that's one thing you could do. Plus, I think some of the best jobs out there are the ones that aren't posted. And that's where network comes from, and getting to know people and asking them, that way they might create a position for you and, have you as a preferred candidate. So, yeah.
The next question, can you comment on the salary of the 5, 10, and 20-year professionals? And ask the panelists. And I don't know if I want to do a deep dive on this one because Autumn just released their salary survey, Technology Transfer Central. They have a very in-depth salary survey that you can get. Salaries, how I'm viewing this, everybody's struggling with the same thing. Salaries in academics are a tad lower. What I find is the national labs tend to pay a notch above academia, and then I find that industry pays a whole nother mark above that. But nobody's ever said, oh, I'm never going into academia because of this either. So do you guys want to give any just kind of quick comments on salary? Because I think everybody's trying to raise their salaries to be more competitive.
Yeah, I would say what you said. I'm not comfortable talking about actual numbers, and you would know better than I because you've dealt with different universities. But it is typically going to be less typically than what you're making in industry.
Yeah.
I'll give some generalities here. Maybe I think for kind of the administrative and support staff, somewhere between 50 and 100 in a national laboratory, maybe up to 120. For licensing professionals, it ranges from 100 to maybe even up to 200 at some laboratories. And then, above that, directors can be a little bit higher, but, not a whole lot higher than that. So that's kind of the general ranges.
So the answer is buy the salary survey from Deb at Technology Transfer Central. Next question. I'm an international student graduating from my MS program at the end of the year, looking to start a career in tech transfer. How should I prepare myself for this career path? To get selected at the start of university, what are the challenge for international student? So going back to that whole visa issue, I think is the big thing. At my autumn career session last year, I did bring up talking to a see if there's a way to do an exchange program. If you're at Imperial University in London, how can you know, maybe from a government program, the government would pay you to be an internship at a university. Feel free to connect with me offline. I don't have a good answer for that one, so I'm going to jump to another question because we're running out of time, and I apologize for that. But these are great questions. What are some must-have skills for an entry-level role, say licensing associate? I think we talked about that. Really, the first thing would be the scientific, that you know, the scientific, and I say the must-have skills. Get Autumn, look at Autumn Foundation for scholarship. Look at the Howard Bremer Scholarship. I think Intium, the software system, provides a scholarship to attend Autumn. If there's any internship programs on my website, if you go to my blog post and look for the intern, I have a list of every place out there and who the person is that's sponsoring, that's running their internship program. Did you talk about how it's easier to move from industry to tech transfer than vice versa? I always thought tech transfer roles at university would be a great bridge to move to academia. So the question is it easier to move one way or the other? I don't have a good view on that. I would think it'd probably be easier to move from academia to industry, but I think it's going to depend on the hiring manager and their bias. So I don't have a hard and fast rule on this one.
Right. And the people I know who've moved to industry, I mean, the industry is looking for people with any experience. And especially if what they want is someone who's going to deal with in-licensing from universities. That used to be part of my job when I was at a biotech company, just going out there and looking at who was doing what in what area and then trying to in-license. So I don't think, I can't say which is easier.
We're running down to the end of the wire. We had some more slides, but I would rather answer your questions. I mean, I think Mary, Jason, and myself can go for this stuff all day, and we all have a passion for it and love it. But I really appreciate your time, Jason and Mary. Deb, do you want to jump in to help close this seminar out?
Sure. We do have just a few more minutes. If anybody has one final question, feel free to post it in the public chat. In the meantime, while we're waiting for our next or final question, I just wanted to thank our panel for this wonderfully enlightening program and all this really great advice. And thank you again to Gardner Innovation Search Partners for generously underwriting this program so we could provide it to you for free. I'd also like to invite the audience to our next webinar, which is on October 24th. This one's titled Bridge the Gap Between Inventor and IP Attorney, How to Bulletproof Your Patents with Airtight Written Descriptions. This session will provide proven methods for ensuring inventors provide the right information in the right way with the right level of detail and background so the patent attorney can translate it into the strongest possible patent while saving time and expense. And you can register for that session by visiting our website, www.techtransfercentral.com. I'll turn it back to our panel for any final words of wisdom.
Yeah.
We do have one question. It says, future of tech transfer, what are the trends?
Mary, do you want to jump on that one?
Oh, I got to say, I wish I knew. I mean, one of the, so I can get there first. One of the trends, over the last several years was, greatly expanding the role of a tech transfer office to include, startups, research, all of those things. I think we are going to have to be broader than even that in our jobs as far as relationships with companies. So like I said, I wish I knew what the next trend was going to be. I'm dying to hear what Jason has to say.
I'll say AI is certainly influencing how we work. We are using it a lot in marketing and creating materials and things like that. And so that's only going to expand. I think AI is going to play a huge part in tech transfer, especially as it matures and becomes more accessible. So there's that. I would also say that I think that talent is getting harder to find. That's what I've been noticing. I don't know, Mary and Glenn, if you observe the same things, but having people with experience is very hard to find. And my comments on CLPs and RTTP, I don't think they're very important from my perspective. They are helpful for a tech transfer office to, I guess, establish that it has credentials. But as far as hiring goes, I would hire somebody that, you know, I wouldn't really look for that as something as a hiring decision. It would be a small minor plus, but all in all, it's not going to sway me one way or another to hire somebody.
I agree with that.
And Mary has both of them, I think, and I agree with that too. But I do like to see that. And then there was the one future trend that I'm going to talk about. I think things are moving to more translational, holding things in house longer, keeping them from a TRL, technology readiness level 2 and 3, to move it along in house, just because nobody wants to license early stage IP anymore. So I think that's another big trend. I don't know how long it's been around. Jason, did you have a comment?
I think capital is shifting from, you know, continents, you know, from towards Asia, of course, and I think that's going to influence the amount of, you know, job opportunities and such. And so, you know, I'm kind of excited about that because I love the idea of going somewhere foreign again. But as those economies become, you know, more wealthy than perhaps, you know, these other territories, that's going to be opportunities for experienced people in tech transfer to go over there and help them. So
true. I do want to say, to jump on your thing, Glenn, about moving to more translational things. Definitely, and one of the things we're looking at, we haven't worked out any of the details, is somehow using safe notes to get people to invest into maybe companies we haven't spun out, but there are companies, because we are trying to address just what you said. I mean, the faculty are like, it takes too much time to get the money we need to do the translation. So yes, we are looking at that.
Perfect. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for all that attended. I'm sorry if we didn't get to all your questions. Feel free to reach out, to find us on LinkedIn, to send us a little note, or our I think Deb will give you our contact information. And we thank you for attending. I appreciate it. I'm very honored to do this.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
And that concludes our session for today. We hope to see you at our next business learning event. Stay safe, stay well. Thank you so much for joining us. Goodbye.